We're saying hello to Gus G here in Manchester. It's the second date of your tour, Gus, isn't it?
Yep.
Easing yourself into the first leg of what's a European tour.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a bit of a cliche this, but let me start off by the questions that really most people are probably thinking about in terms of your career, and most recently your experiences with Ozzy. It comes up all the time probably now in interviews and in conversation, but what do you think your experiences so far with Ozzy has taught you in terms of like career development? Because it must be amazing to actually play with somebody who's so well established with such a big audience. How has it had an effect on your own musical development?
I mean, obviously it's beyond awesome. You know, it's the best thing ever. But it has made me a better musician, I think, and a better performer on stage and a better player. So it definitely has helped me and propelled me to step it up in many ways. So yeah, it's only done good, really. You know, doing things at such a large scale. Not many musicians get a chance to get an insight of you know, how the big boys do it. So I'm blessed, really, that I've had a chance to be a part of that kind of like machinery and see how it all works, and you know how it is to do it at that scale. It's fantastic.
Do you think the way it's worked out a little bit later in your career, because from what I can gather you started out in the late 1990s musically anyway, as far as we know in terms of recordings and stuff.
Yeah.
But would you say it probably takes about 10 years to get to that position of real confidence to be able to play with somebody like Ozzy, and or is that not an issue for you?
It hadn't even crossed my mind that I would ever get to play with such a big artist. I mean, most musicians don't think that. I don't know. I was just doing my band. I mean, I had been in lots of bands. I've been around before for 10 years doing records and touring, and you know, playing the small gigs, playing the big festivals, all kinds of gigs, and I did have experience and did have a small career as well. You know, so it never really crossed my mind that I would one day get to that level, you know, of playing with a legend like that. So it was just one of these miracles, you know, one of these wonders of of life that you know, it was just an opportunity that it came up, and I jumped at it.
Yeah. And it seems that you've answered the obvious question for people over the last 12 months, let's say, because I think people thought that with Firewind, that was going to go a little bit on the back burner for you because of the Ozzy thing. But it hasn't actually happened. You've released a new album, Few Against Many.
Yeah.
You're now touring it.
Yeah.
So I think you've always said, haven't you, that the two can happily coexist, really?
I think so, yeah. I mean, the only problem was with the bad timing on our previous album, Days of Defiance, which came out 2 months after Ozzy's album came out, and I was already out on a big world tour with him. So we couldn't really tour that album until a year later. But once Ozzy's tour wound down, we just went back in the studio. We had lots of ideas. And I knew I was going to have at least a year off from Ozzy's band, and because he was going to do the Black Sabbath reunion and stuff. So here we are. You know, we just did an album and touring to promote it right now.
Do you get frustrated a little bit with the Ozzy side of things? Because I've read elsewhere that you'd like to obviously write with him and make more of a contribution to the album, really, because I think you came in on the album.
I came in
quite late,
kind of like on the 11th hour, so to speak.
Yeah,
you know, it was like and they had no guitar player. It was just and Ozzy co-wrote all the songs with Kevin Churchill, the producer. So I mean, you know, it's not like, for me, it was just amazing to be there, you know, just to even play on the record, you know. I saw it as a challenge rather than being frustrated. It was a big challenge for me to put my mark on a record like that, of that caliber, without writing it, so, and somehow leave my mark on it. So it was an interesting experience, you know. It was a great experience. But you know, obviously, I would like to you know, when we get around to do another album, I would like to write with Ozzy together. And we already, you know, jammed some new ideas while on the road, and I think if we ever had the chance to do it like properly on a record, on a production, I think we could come up with a really killer record.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Because I mean, the album itself, Scream, is fantastic.
It's a great album,
you know,
and it got really good reviews when it came out. You know, lots of people said it was you know, one of his best you know, that he's put out the last 10 years and stuff. So or I read stuff like even the best album since No More Tears, and you know, like even crazy stuff like that. So it was a very well reviewed CD, and yeah, it was a great comeback for Ozzy, I think.
And would you like to, ideally, would you like to have done more gigs? 'Cause I think you only did a few showcase gigs, maybe one in Birmingham, one in London when the album
we
was
did
released.
like over 100 gigs for that.
100?
Yeah, we
Oh
were on tour for 18 months.
With Ozzy?
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we toured everywhere. Japan, South America. We did like
So
4 American
am I right
tours.
in saying you didn't do much in the UK then?
Well, we did the O2 Arena in London.
Yes.
We did the Ozzfest, the UK version of
yes.
Ozzfest. We did
Yeah.
that. We did the Hammersmith gig last year. What else?
So it's over a period of about 2 years. Really.
So over a period of about 2 years, we did a couple of big gigs like that, and we also did like we started out in England doing a warm-up tour in small clubs.
Right.
So there was quite a few gigs in England.
Yeah. So you don't feel too cheated really in terms of the live
Not
performance.
Me. Not
No.
me. It was amazing. We did over 100 gigs, and we played. I think we must have sold over 1 million tickets along the way. So it was amazing.
Yeah. Now, you started out in your homeland of Greece, and for ignorant people, like myself really, that we only know the likes of Aphrodite's Child and Demis Roussos. And
Great.
yeah, it's something, isn't it?
Yes.
But of course, you shook things up a little bit in terms of rock, because with Firewind and with your own career from the late 1990s, did you find it difficult because Greece hasn't really got an indigenous rock industry, if you like? It's very much influenced by America and UK and everything. So,
well, I mean,
how difficult was it for you in the early days?
Everybody knows we're not really a big market for having exports in rock and roll, or Greece isn't really the heavy metal mecca of all places. But it was very difficult for me starting out. I mean, to begin with, I couldn't really find proper band members. I don't know, when I was a teenager. So that's when I bought a drum machine and an 8-track. So I said, fuck it, I'll do it myself. So I just started writing my demos, learned how to use a drum machine, kind of like make my own little songs, and I'd send them around to labels, just instrumental demos, trying to catch some attention by somebody, and then eventually I did. I ended up being offered a small record deal by Leviathan Records, a small US label, and so that's how we started out. We started kind of like on an unorthodox way. The first few albums was just basically me and some session guys helping me out that Leviathan Records helped me put together. And then when the time came that we were all being offered tour opportunities, and actually the first tour that was offered to us was in Japan, that's when I realized that I needed a real band. And I knew I couldn't find that in Greece, so it was a long process for us to become a live band, the band that people know today. So we didn't really have a stable lineup until the 4th record, that was Allegiance. So we've only been really a touring band for the last 5-6 years. Yeah.
So you did eventually find your band, but am I right in saying you went to the States sort of early on in your career?
I was in, I spent some time there. I went to Berkeley College for a while, but then I dropped out, and it was a long story.
Yeah.
But I was kind of like back and forth. Then I don't know, then I went to Sweden, and I was in this band called Dream Evil. So I did my first albums with those guys, and at the same time I had Firewind. But like I said, it was not really a proper band back then. The albums were good, but there was just no proper, stable lineups to go out and tour the records. So yeah.
And what do you consider over the last 10 years, say, as the breakthrough event which you felt that you were really getting somewhere with your music, in terms of either Firewind or anything really? Was there one event, a gig, an album where you think, well, actually, we've arrived here?
I thought the album Allegiance in 2006, that was like the breakthrough for Firewind, actually. That was the album that we were actually able to go out on the first world tour. That was the first time that we went to America. We did an extensive UK tour and European tour. We started supporting bigger bands and started selling more records. So that's when things started to happen a bit more for the band, and yeah. I think that was kind of like, but I think the next album was, I guess, what people consider the landmark album for Firewind, the Premonition. That was 2 years later. But it's been like those two were the albums where we really worked hard, and we have established the band on a worldwide level, international level, and started building our fan base more and more.
And do you think the secret, Gus, of that is the grassroots getting out and playing gigs like this, really, you know, and
yeah,
it's always been that way.
It's really about, yeah, I mean, because, you know, a band like us is not going to get on TV or radio, you know, we're a heavy metal band. And for a while, we actually thought that because we were able to write catchy rock songs, for a while, we actually thought that we were going to get a radio hit, but I don't think it's going to happen if you're, you know, tagged as a heavy metal band or a power metal band or whatnot. So I just, you know, with heavy metal, if anything else, it's all about word of mouth. So you got to go out there and play and you know, gain one fan at a time. And that's what we did, and that's what we still do.
Still do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you're currently promoting the current album, Few Against Many. I mean, I think personally it stands up against some of your strongest albums, really, and certainly more consistent than the previous one, Days of Defiance. Did you have any objectives with this current album? You know, do you have any preconceived ideas? It has to sound like a Firewind album.
Actually, I wanted this to be a very different album for Firewind originally. When I started writing material, like one of the first songs I wrote was Losing My Mind, and I knew that I was onto something different here. I wanted to bring out some elements that we had already that existed in our music, but they were not out there on the surface that much. And that was basically the groove aspect of it and the heaviness. Because I noticed when we were playing the more heavy stuff on our shows, people were really headbanging and moshing, and I saw them enjoying the show a bit more. So I'm like, we should probably involve, you know, a bit like those kind of parts a bit more in our music, and that was kind of like the original thought process. So I just wanted to make a different record. I didn't want any of our songs on this album to remind any of the older songs, but at the same time still keep our identity, if that makes sense. So I don't know, I just wrote a lot of stuff that was very guitar based and riff based, and we went from there. And then once the other guys started putting in their input and stuff, then it obviously, you know, you get that Firewind sound, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's riffier, let's say, isn't it? I think it's sort of like, yeah.
It's a lot more guitar based.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that in itself might bring in new fans, mightn't it? Because they think it's less of the power metal style.
It's still
there. But
it still gets tagged as power metal because after 6 or 7 albums, that's all people know. Oh, Firewind, great band for a power metal band. And that's not a cool thing in 2012, unfortunately, because to me it doesn't mean anything. Good music is good music, you know. And this is actually way less power metal than our previous records have been. That's not to say for the older fans that they cannot enjoy the new album, you know. But you know, it was just like we just wanted to make a heavier record and a different record. That's all it was, really. We just wanted to try and evolve and not really make Allegiance Part 4 or something, or Premonition Part 3 or whatever you want to call it. There was no point in making another record like that because we've already done those records.
So do you think perhaps the next one now will follow on from this, you know, logically, more guitar based and
hopefully, yeah, but I don't really know. I mean, I haven't really thought about it because then again, I wouldn't maybe in a year or 2 years from now, maybe I don't want to do a record like this again. So maybe it has to. I'm always trying to find new elements to include in our music. So I don't know what that's going to be, but yeah, I definitely like this new direction, a bit more the heavier direction, a bit more guitar based. Yeah.
And did playing and associating with Ozzy over the past 18 months, 2 years, rub off at all on this current album?
I mean, it's got to, you know. I mean, it's a big part of my life, you know, and I think it definitely has an influence on what I did as a guitar player and as a musician on the new one.
Yeah. Because I mean, you could say he's quite riff based, isn't he?
He is, and because, you know, working with Ozzy, I went back and kind of like, because before that I got the gig, I was not really, you know, I never really thought of my status as a guitar player, even though I was, you know, I was getting quite a lot of attention as a guitar player, but I never really thought about it. But once I got the gig, then I said to myself, well, this obviously means something here. So I kind of like went back and sort of rediscovered my roots. I started practicing a lot more again, try to come up with new stuff, and really dig in and find what my strengths and weaknesses are as a guitar player. And I think that, yeah, that whole thing just made me better, that whole process, you know.